Hey, shalom, and welcome to the Anchor podcast. Today, we're joined by General Amir Avivi, one of Israel's most respected voices on national security and defense strategy. A former senior IDF officer, he served for over 30 years in key command and staff positions, including in combat engineering, strategic planning, and as an aide to the Chief of Staff. After retiring from the military, he founded the IDSF, the Israel Defense and Security Forum, a network of hundreds of former generals, officers, and defense experts dedicated to strengthening Israel's security and values. General Amir is also the author of No Retreat: How to Secure Israel for Generations to Come, a strategic call to action for Israel's future. Today, we'll talk about his background, the founding of the IDSF, the failures that led to October 7th, and how he sees Israel's future in this changing regional landscape. So I want to welcome General Avivi to our podcast. Shalom, General.
Shalom. Thank you for having me.
General, you have an exceptional story. Not only that you joined the IDF, as all do at the age of 18, but actually your story goes all the way back. Your family story goes back hundreds of years, back to Jerusalem, which is not the case of most of the Israelis nowadays here. So tell us your story.
Yeah, so I come from a family that has been living in Jerusalem 15 generations. My family
Amazing.
arrived to Israel in 1620.
Straight from Spain.
Not straight, almost straight.
Almost straight.
They were expelled from Spain.
True, yes.
As many Jews were, at the
Yes.
time in the 16th century. They moved to Saloniki, to Greece. And from Greece, they made Aliyah. They came to live in Jerusalem, in the old city. There was nothing else,
Yes.
There was the old city. It's amazing that Jerusalem, the moment the Jews left, remained within the walls 2,000 years.
Amazing.
The first time the first neighborhood is built outside of the walls is when Jews come back,
In the
and Jerusalem
1800s,
then starts to grow. And when the first neighborhood was built, Yemin Moshe, my family moved to Yemin Moshe.
Which was very daring at that time.
Very daring.
Because
Security-wise,
Exactly.
definitely. And from there, they spread all over Jerusalem.
Amazing. And then you basically, the first 18 years of your life, you only spent 3 years in Israel. Why?
Well, my father was a paratrooper, an officer in the paratroopers. He fought in the Six-Day War, liberating Jerusalem.
Wow.
And once he finished his military service, he joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And he was sent to his first mission to Rome at the age of 22, exactly when I was born.
Wow, very young.
Very young. And so I found myself from the age of 0, basically, moving every 2.5, 3 years from country to country. I lived in Italy. I lived in Ivory Coast in Africa. I lived in Chile and Argentina, 5.5 years.
So 3 extra languages.
Yeah, Italian,
Actually,
French,
4.
Spanish.
Yes.
And I came back to Israel for my bar mitzvah at the age of 13. Spent 3 years in Israel. And at the age of 16, my father tells me, Amir, we're moving again. We went back to Rome, where I graduated from a British high school. I had an amazing experience there. Being a Jew and an Israeli, in 3 years, became
Amazing.
house captain in my school. And, I thought about it a lot. How did they make me house captain? I was new. I was a Jew. I was an Israeli,
They signaled your future.
Yeah, I could have attributed it to, I excelled in sports. I had leadership, but really it was about something else. I was a very, very proud Jew and Israeli, and it reflected everywhere. And I learned a very big lesson every Jew needs to learn. When you respect yourself and who you are,
You're being respected.
people respect you.
Amazing. And then you moved back to Israel alone. Your parents are still back in Rome. And by yourself, you joined the Combat Engineering Corps in the IDF. Take us from there.
So I come back at the age of 18 from this British school, straight to the first Intifada, find myself in fierce fighting against the riots of Palestinians, but also a lot of operations in Lebanon. I start, as every Israeli starts, as a simple soldier. I really liked military service. I went to officers' course, became an officer, platoon commander, company commander. And at a certain point in the April 2002, when Operation Defensive Shield starts, really an operation that intended to destroy the terror infrastructure that emerged in Judea and Samaria.
Almost toppled Arafat at that time.
Yeah.
And left him in a small little enclave in Ramallah.
Right. So April 2002, the operation starts. April 2002, I'm given command of 800 soldiers, Battalion 605, Battalion of Combat Engineering. And I find myself in the fiercest fight I've ever experienced in my life. We fought 10 months, day and night, foiling terror attacks of all these suicide bombers who tried to storm Israeli cities. And after 10 months, the soldiers were really, really tired. And at that time, the command told us, you have 3 weeks to organize. You are going to 10 months more.
Wow.
And this was tough, really
Very
tough on the soldiers. And I took my whole battalion, 800 soldiers, to speak with them. And as I'm speaking with them, I find myself asking them a very, very strange question to ask an Israeli soldier. How many of you have ever in your life been in Jerusalem?
Really?
And I found out half of my battalion has never stepped foot in Jerusalem. Israeli soldiers.
Wow.
And the half that were in Jerusalem, they were not, half of them have never been in the Kotel, in the Wailing Wall. So, I understood at that moment that I have, great kids, a lot of potential. They have zero understanding what they're fighting for.
Wow.
And I asked myself, okay, what do I do? I
you only have 3 weeks.
Yeah, 1 week to organize the equipment, 1 week of vacation, and 1 week of training. To train a battalion like mine is 4 months at least. 1 week. I said, you know what? The only week they have to train, they're not going to train. They're going to Jerusalem for a whole week.
Wow.
And we went to Jerusalem, 800 soldiers. We started in David City, connecting 3,000 years back to King David, King Solomon. We went to the Kotel, to the tunnels, to the old city. We went also to the Knesset. And in the last day, 800 soldiers sat at the president's house and spoke with the president of Israel.
Wow.
When this battalion went back to the battlefield, it was a completely transformed battalion. They fought like lions. It's all about spirit. It's all about the connection. So you did
train them, but in a different way.
Right. And really connecting to our Jewish Zionist values. This is the most important thing, really, to mobilize, soldiers to understand what they're fighting for. The spirit is more important than any plane or tank.
Isn't it amazing that that's basically the story of so many Israelis over the last 50 years or so? We've seen a decline in the Jewish identity. We want to be the citizens of the whole world. We want to be like everyone. By the way, that's the story of the Jewish people from day one. They always wanted to be like the others.
Right.
And the minute they became like the others, they lost their unique ability to retain the calling that they have to be here. And they lost the land a few times. So I see that also in Israel happening to so many, both simple soldiers and generals as well.
Yeah, I think that in the last, 50 years, a movement started that tried to really distance the Jewish people from their core values. They said, why do we need that? I mean, now we are a modern country, a Western country like any other country. Let's focus on prosperity, on high tech. And they really tried to change the DNA of the Jewish people.
Even to change the DNA of Zionism. They peeled off all the spiritual side of Zionism, and they made it as if we did it by our own, and that's not anything that has to do with the Bible or God or the prophets.
It's true. And they also tried to politicize our core values. They made Judaism and Zionism a political issue. And when you do that, the reaction in the army or in any governmental entity is, we don't deal with politics. We put politics aside.
Yes.
And suddenly our values became a political issue. And this is devastating to the spirit, to the connection of the young generation, but not only, also the generals. You see suddenly generals that disconnect from the story.
You saw it firsthand, because after you were done with your job as the battalion commander, you actually were elected by the chief of staff of the Israeli military to be his, how do you call it?
Aide-de-camp.
Aide-de-camp, which is the head of his office, basically, which it's actually a very, very amazing place to be, because you get to see the whole picture.
Right. It was an interesting story because, as I told you, the battalion went back to the battlefield and they excelled in combat to such an extent that after 3 months of fighting, the chief of staff calls me to his office.
Amazing.
And I go, from the battlefield to the Kiryat, to Tel Aviv, to the office of the chief of staff. I was very nervous, first time in the office of the chief of staff. And I go in, and he asks me, he says, Amir, what's going on with your battalion? How come they're excelling like that in combat? I told him it's all about the connection to who we are, to
Amazing.
Judaism, to Zionism, to our story. And I think he was so impressed that 2 years into my position as battalion commander, he decides to take me to his office to be his aide-de-camp.
It's basically his right hand.
His right hand on the operational side. I was in charge of coordinating all the operations of the IDF in coordination with the Shin Bet and the Mossad.
Wow.
So everything that we see today, these pagers and all of that, that was part of
we see today the end of something that began then.
Definitely. And also all the intelligence, I had the chance to really see the big picture of all the sources of intelligence of Israel. And we see how amazing they are, talking about Iran, Lebanon, Gaza, and so on. And also the international relations.
So here you are, an excellent officer. I mean, literally excelled in every position you were, and you were sharp enough to take a look at Israel's geopolitical and strategic situation, but from a standpoint of someone who can see also, who is, having intelligence in front of him. And you then, I believe, started shaping your idea of what Israel not only is going through, but should be doing.
Yeah, so, at the time I was at the office of the chief of staff, we basically won the battle in Judea and Samaria against terrorism. We managed to dismantle most of the terror infrastructure. It took us overall 5 years, but 2 years after Operation Defensive Shield, things in Judea and Samaria were stabilized. We won against terror. But at that time, 10 years after Oslo in Gaza, complete loss of control in the Gaza Strip. I want to explain what happened in Gaza. Okay, Gaza from 1967, when we liberated this area, all the way to the early 90s, Gaza was a non-issue. Gaza was at the Stone Age.
I was actually, my officer's academy, I was there in Gaza, in Khan Yunis, and we walked freely at night even.
Right. Now, in Oslo, when we brought this vicious terror organization, the PLO, and weaponized them and gave them control over the cities, when we started Oslo, we said we'll manage risks. The way we decided to manage the risk is take the two places that were the least problematic
and made them
and give them control in these places. This is how Gaza and Jericho first started. Because Gaza was a non-issue.
I was in Jericho at that time. I mean, Gaza was when I did the training, but Jericho is when I was the deputy governor at that time. And I implemented the Oslo Accord in the Jericho area. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right. And remember that Jericho was a non-issue in Judea and Samaria. The same was Gaza, So what we said is we'll manage the risk. We're not going to leave a Philadelphia corridor, which we talk about a lot now. Mm-hmm. We are not going to remove our towns. We're just going to give them control in the cities.
To manage their own business.
To manage their own business, but we took a very dramatic decision that will impact later on. We are not going into the cities anymore. We are not operating. This was implemented in 1994.
Yeah.
2 years later, 1996, they launched a huge attack on us. The deputy division commander in Gaza was killed. Many soldiers were hurt.
You became the deputy division commander of Gaza. Also.
Later on, but in 1996, I was a major, I was a deputy battalion commander. I was already appointed to be chief instructor in the School of Combat Engineering. I was very happy because it's a great position before promotion to lieutenant colonel. But then, following this devastating attack in 1996, that changed everything in 2 years in Gaza. I'm called urgently to meet my commander of Corps of Combat Engineers in a gas station in the north of Israel. Wow. Imagine, you have an interview in a gas station. And I arrived to the gas station, and my commander says to me, Amir, listen, I know you are supposed to go to the School of Combat Engineering. I have to change that. I need you in Gaza. I said, Gaza? Who heard about this place? It was a non-issue. No serious officer goes and serves in Gaza in 1996.
It's actually, in a way, a little embarrassing.
Yeah, it's even an embarrassment. Gaza was the only division in 1996 in the army that the combat engineer officer was a major and not a lieutenant colonel. Even this major, the chances of promotions were zero because it was not a good place to serve,
You were looking for a promotion and you felt like it's a demotion.
Right. So I say to him, listen, give me, a day or two to think about it because I was shocked, And as I'm driving back, even before I reach the base, I get a phone call from the human resources officer of the Gaza division. Says to me, Amir, the Gaza division commander wants to interview you. I said, wow, these guys work fast, So I found myself being interviewed Friday morning in the house of the commander of the division, which is also very, strange. I arrive on uniform Friday morning, knock on the door. The division commander opens the door. I see a guy with t-shirt and sandals. Takes me to his garden, prepares for me a cappuccino, and starts explaining to me what's going on in Gaza. The name of this division commander is Yoav Gallant, our former Minister of Defense. And Yoav says to me, Amir, listen, everything changed. 2 years after Oslo, everything changed. I need the best combat engineer officer with me, and it's you. I need you to come, So I found myself in 1997 arriving to Gaza division as the combat engineer officer, years before I became deputy of this division. In the first week, I was shocked. I was shocked because I found myself being responsible of a threat which I never heard of before, never encountered, never dealt with. And I'm a major in the combat engineers. This threat is tunnels.
What?
1997.
You already then saw that threat.
So a minute after we retreated from the cities in 1994, they immediately began digging tunnels from the Gazan side of Rafah to the Egyptian side of Rafah. In the 2 years I was in the Gaza division as a combat engineer officer, we found 35 tunnels already on Philadelphia. I don't know what we didn't found because, it was all new. We had no technologies. And as we were dealing with this new phenomena called tunnels, we started seeing things flying out of the cities and flying and falling. And it took us a month to understand that this Palestinian Authority, they are building a huge terror infrastructure inside the cities, taking advantage from the fact that we are not operating inside.
And it wasn't Hamas yet, was it?
It was the Palestinian Authority.
It was that authority that the whole world is telling us to let them rule Gaza.
And this reality took Gaza from literally the Stone Age in 1994 to shooting rockets 7 years later. 7 years later, they shot rockets. They went from the Stone Age to rockets just by the fact that we didn't operate in that cities. That was enough. 3 years later, 2004, when I became aide-de-camp, already complete loss of control. We operated with whole brigades, tanks, APCs, snipers, drones, and we couldn't contain the level of terror that was emanating from the Gaza Strip 10 years later. And we were in a moment of decision making.
It's like 5 ants turning into thousands of ants.
Right. And we just won a big win in Judea and Samaria with 30,000 soldiers, not 300,000, not 400,000 like that, 30,000 soldiers.
Because we had foot on the ground.
Right. Yeah. And then the logical decision was, let's take these 30, 40,000 soldiers to Gaza and get it over with, dismantle this terror infrastructure. Then we can talk about visions, of what will happen later on and so on. Instead of that, one day I'm sitting with the chief of staff in the office as they camp. Secretary comes in and says, open the TV, you need to see this. We open the TV. We see Prime Minister Sharon standing in Herzliya Convention and saying, I decided to pull out of Gaza. Now, the chief of staff
opposite.
Looks at the TV, shocked. I mean, he didn't discuss this with the army, not with the Ministry of Defense, not with the National Security Council. He took a decision with himself.
And we all know why.
Yeah, I know he was under investigation and so on, but I can tell you that we were shocked. We brought the generals, we tried to understand and assess the situation. And a week later, he summons a cabinet meeting. Now, I can tell you, I participated in many cabinet meetings. Some of them were pretty dramatic. This cabinet meeting really changed me. It was a shocking cabinet meeting.
A cabinet meeting, people need to understand, it's the selected group of ministers that are acting as the body that decides whether we do some very drastic moves or not.
Right. So, we come to the cabinet meeting. The prime minister sits at the head of the table. You have the ministers around, the chief of staff, the head of Shin Bet. We sit in the side. Prime minister slaps the door and says, I decided to pull out of Gaza. What's your assessment? And I was a young officer. I'm thinking to myself, I don't know, in the army, we usually assess first and then decide,
exactly.
What does it mean? And the chief of staff says to him, Mr. Prime Minister, listen, if you pull out of Gaza like that in the middle of a war, in 1 year, Gaza is going to become Hamastan, El-Qadastan, and Hezbollastan. This is what's going to happen. In 1 year, Prime Minister doesn't say anything. He looks at the head of Shin Bet. Says, what's your assessment? He said exactly what the chief of staff said. If you connect Gaza to Egypt, endless amount of weapons, money, technology are going to pour into, the Gaza Strip. We're going to lose control. And although this was the assessment, the prime minister decides to move forward with his plan.
Wow.
We leave this meeting shocked. Look, when I left the room, I saw the 7th of October.
Wow.
I knew exactly what's going to happen, how devastating this is going to be. It shook me. I really felt a sense of
and what year
existential threat. It was 20 years ago, It was in 2005.
Yes.
Exactly 20 years ago.
And that's the famous disengagement.
This is the disengagement. This is pulling out in the middle of a war with no logic, because we just won against terror, on the mountains of Judea and Samaria. And
maybe that was his logic. We won here, so we're strong enough to allow ourselves to do this.
He was a military genius. I cannot think that when the army and the Shin Bet said to him, we're going to lose control and Hamas is going to take over in a year, that he doesn't understand that. It didn't make sense. And I can tell you that 2 months later, he fired the chief of staff. He brought Chalutz, and it was shocking to me to see how easy it is for the government to take a devastating decision and package it to the society in a way that people don't understand.
And I was one of them. I was one of those people that bought the lie. In those days, the TV channels were very few of them, and they all said the same thing. And we were brainwashed to think this is the best thing for us and for our children.
Right. So when I saw that, first, I felt a sense of existential threat. I said to myself, okay, this is the kind of decision-making that Israel does, and it's so easy to sell it to the public. It's just a matter of time until we destroy ourselves. It's not our enemies that are going to destroy us. We are going to self-destruct. And I said to myself, if we are not going to build a very, very dominant national security organization that will dominate the public sphere and really shape the narrative about what is needed to secure Israel for generations to come and educate, the young generation, the general public, decision makers, what decision strengthens Israel and what decision is devastating. If we won't do that, it's just a matter of time until Israel will be in an existential threat. And this, understanding.
12 years, you're still in the military with this type of understanding already.
Right. So I served many years and continue to see again and again devastating decision making, And when I retired 30 years after service, I retired and I felt a deep sense of, existential threat. And I said, I need to do something about it. So I started lecturing, talking about that. And 5 years ago, I said, okay, that's it. I need to do something. And I founded IDSF, Israel's Defense and Security Forum. I knew that most of the officers, commanders, operators of the IDF, Shin Bet, Mossad, they are brave, they are Zionists, they are resolute, but they had no voice at all.
And they're not being promoted.
Right.
Also because they're not part of the new mind of or way of thinking of the liberal progressive ones.
So I said we need to organize, we need to bring a strong voice. I called some of the generals I trusted and I knew that they were serious people. And we founded IDSF 5 years ago with a very clear vision. We are going to shape the understanding of what is needed to secure
It's
Israel.
The Israel Defense and Security Forum.
Right.
And idsf.co.il.
Right.
And we're talking about a think tank?
So it's an interesting combination of a grassroots movement and think tank. because we understood that if we want to shape hearts and minds on a national level, it cannot be done just by doing research. You really need to dominate media, social media, have representation in every single city and town in Israel, do many lectures and meetings, so on. So we started with 8 officers. Today, more than 60,000 Israeli officers, commanders, operators, and general public, joined. And we built a very interesting strategy that combines 4 efforts. One is educating the young generation. We mobilize thousands of officers to high schools and pre-army programs. This year we built our own pre-army program in the area surrounding Gaza in Moshav Tkuma.
Wow.
We mobilized many officers to media and social media, and suddenly this whole voice has become very strong on television, on national TV, and so on.
And you are on a lot of, I watch you on American networks, on European ones, and yeah, you are doing a very good job in that. So 2020, IDSF was founded, and then you began not only to speak to people, but you also began to speak to leaders.
Right. So from day one, we said we need to shape policies, we need to impact decision-making in Israel. And I can tell you that in 2021, like a year and a half after we were founded, some of the generals call me and say, Amir, listen, something big is happening. We need to convene. We need to talk about that. And it was so urgent that we met Friday morning in my garden in Caesarea. And we sat for 3 hours. And at the end of these 3 hours, we got to the conclusion, war is imminent. We're going to war.
Wow.
2 years before the war, we knew that a multi-front war is going to...
Okay, so you saw what now everybody knows of, the ring of fire that Iran, the proxy military that Iran is building, is coordinating an imminent simultaneous attack on Israel. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Right. And we said, okay, so what do? We have this understanding. So we decided to write a very, very detailed national security assessment.
And that was after the assassination of Soleimani.
Right. But also after the retreat from Afghanistan. It was also after
so Biden is already
operation.
So Biden is already president.
Right.
And you already see that imminent...
Yeah. So this big change, when we saw the retreat from Afghanistan, which conveyed a message to the radical Muslim world, US is weak. This is our moment. Also, Russia got this message and invaded Ukraine. And suddenly you see this Iranian, Russian, Chinese front emerging in the Middle East. And Iran reaching a point where they feel strong enough and also backed up by 2 big entities, Russia and China. And they feel strong enough to attack us. And as all this is happening and America is retreating from the Middle East, you see in Israel 5 consecutive elections, a society that seems broken, political system that seems broken. And this weakness of Israel, coupled by the strengths of Iran and this front that has emerged and the weakness of the US, brought us to the understanding war is imminent and we have only 2 choices. Or a 6-day war scenario, or a Yom Kippur scenario. Or we are proactive and we attack first, or they're going to attack us and it's going to be by surprise. This we knew. We presented this assessment.
But your assessment and your amazing, understanding of the geopolitical situation was more on the multi-front thing. It wasn't just, Gaza is going to attack first.
So we didn't know exactly how it will happen, but our recommendation was start with Gaza and conquer Gaza. Because we saw that Hamas was really the generator of everything that was happening in the land of Israel. They were mobilizing Israeli Arabs, Palestinians in Judah and Samaria, coercing us. They were a big problem.
Collaborating with Hezbollah.
Right, and we saw that it would be a good idea to start by attacking
So you're
Hamas.
Telling the Israeli prime ministers, go and take over Gaza.
Right, but also more than that, we told them, listen, there is a huge change. It's a change that requires the politicians to unite, to change completely, really the priorities, to invest in the army, to start producing
Get ready
massive
for a big
munitions.
war.
Get ready. Now, we said you need to attack. Now, Prime Minister might say, look, we didn't have legitimacy, not from the Israeli society, not from the international community, maybe. But why didn't you prepare? We needed to train the army. We needed to start producing many munitions. We needed to accumulate more munitions, procure more. And we didn't do anything. We didn't move towards, preparing for the imminent war that was about to...
Yeah, the country was in complete chaos with the judicial reform.
And we felt that we were in such a huge problem that we decided to explain how we feel in one picture that we put on the cover of the assessment. Not the book. I'll talk about the book. In the assessment, we put a picture of a frog being boiled in a pot.
Wow.
And we said, this is Israel. Israel is being boiled in a pot. And if we don't do something about that, this frog is going to die inside the pot. It's just a matter of time, maybe 5 years, maybe 10, 20. But it was devastating, the situation we were in.
So you saw it as an existential threat?
Definitely. And it wasn't the only threat. I mean, one threat we addressed was Iran and all its proxies. One threat. All this war is one threat out of 4 we talked about. The second threat we addressed was what we call the fight over the land of Israel. The fight over the Negev, the Galil, Judea and Samaria. It's the fight over sovereignty, over governance.
So
we have many challenges inside the land of Israel.
Not talking about the countries or the people
Not the ring around us, but what's going on inside.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also addressed delegitimation and anti-Semitism as a huge threat. We looked at the big picture, also what's happening around the world, the threat to the Jewish people. And last but not least, the last threat we addressed was us, the Jewish people, our distancing from core Jewish values, from Zionism, lack of unity inside Israel, but also in the relationship between Jews in Israel and the diaspora.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at so many challenges and you feel that nothing is done, this is what made us feel that we are like a frog being, being boiled in a pot. And as we were presenting this to the government and to the army and the Mossad and so on, I said to myself, how do we convey this message to the general public? And I decided to write a book.
And you actually came up with the Hebrew version of now, which is in English. It's called No Retreat. And by the way, you can find it on Amazon. We have a QR code underneath that you can scan and get it. But this book in the Hebrew version actually was published 6 months before October 7th.
So it was published 6 months before the war. It describes the whole war that is coming and also what will happen after the war. And so far, it's very, very accurate.
Very accurate.
And when I was asked, okay, what do you want on the cover of the book?
Yeah, and that's the original in Hebrew. And so tell us about the cover.
Yeah, so what we see, first the name in Hebrew is we cannot go back, or meaning we cannot be back in the diaspora.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot be thrown out of our country. And when I published a book that says we have no choice, we cannot go back to the diaspora, people, what are you talking about? We have the army, we have the Shin Bet, what diaspora? But I felt that we are in an existential threat. And I chose to put a picture of a soldier looking visionary ahead, but the shadow of the soldier is the boy from the Holocaust, standing like that,
right here. Yes.
In front of the Nazis, completely helpless. And this is how I felt 6 months before the war, a sense of Holocaust. And we look at the yellow, which reminds also the hostages, right?
True.
So really, the book was saying to the Israeli people, war is upon us. But I can tell you that on the 7th of October...
Where were you when it happened?
So 6:30 in the morning, I was sleeping. My wife woke me up in Caesarea. She woke me up. She said, Amir, we are in a war. I wake up. It takes me a minute to understand that it's Hamas attacking. And the first thing that crosses my mind, why isn't Hezbollah attacking? I mean, we envisioned a multi-front war.
Yes.
As a military guy, it didn't make sense to me. Because it didn't make sense just Hamas attacking so fiercely,
Which later on you understood it was a big mistake that they...
Yeah. So second question I asked myself, what is Hamas thinking? Are they crazy? How can, don't they understand what will happen later on? Okay, maybe they surprise us and it's devastating. But I knew at that moment it will take us a day, maybe 2, maybe 3. We're going to stop them, kill all of them on our side, push them back to Gaza. And then what exactly didn't think will happen? And I realized that they really, really believe that we are so broken that they can attack such a fierce attack on us and they will survive it. They really believe so.
That they will survive.
Yeah. Even if they attack alone, they believe they will survive because the world will stop us, because we won't have the reservists there, or we won't have the energies to
Do you think they
fight them.
They also thought that others will join them because they made the first move?
They did think that others will join, which didn't happen in the first day. Now, I can tell you that the first thing we did is call the Northern Commander and say, listen, we don't know what the army is saying to you. Mobilize the whole Northern Command now. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers
what I remember.
To the northern border.
Everybody thought it's just a diversion from what's coming next, which is from Hezbollah.
So first thing was make sure that there is no other front, that we contain this, that it's only the southern front, and make sure that Hezbollah doesn't attack us by surprise. So in the first hours, we were really concerned about actually what's going on in the north, even more than the south, looking at the big picture of a war. And 4 hours into the war, as many of our officers were mobilized south, and fighting. My deputy, by the way, in reserve is the Gaza Division operations officers in reserve. So we were in touch all the time, coordinating.
Buskila?
4 hours, Buskila. 4 hours into the war, we do an assessment and we say, okay, that's it, we're going to win.
Because you knew...
we knew that looking at the big picture, no matter how devastating what's going on, they're going to lose. They did a huge mistake that by the fact that Hamas attacked alone. And Buskila says to me, Amir, listen, there is no government, no army, nobody speaking to the people. Forget about everything that's going on. Go now to national TV and speak to the people.
Wow.
Because somebody needs to speak to the people. So I went to national TV. I covered all major networks that moment. Everybody was completely shocked, right? But we knew this is coming. We are generals. We understand the big picture. I stood on TV and I said, dear people of Israel, it's a devastating moment. Yes, a very tough moment. But I want to tell you exactly what's going to happen. It's going to take a day or 2, or maybe 3. We're going to contain this. We're going to kill all of them on our side. We're going to push them into Gaza. As we speak, we already stabilized the north and Judah and Samaria, and the police is now all over the place. They cannot surprise us anymore. We're controlling everything else. And in 3 days' time, everything will shift. And now it's us taking the initiative. We are going to attack and we're going to completely change our fate. This frog has jumped out of the pot and it's not going back ever again. Because if you would have asked me a year or 2 before, what would make this frog jump out of the pot? Couldn't see it. But
can I rephrase what you just said and is terrible it might sound. October 7th maybe saved us.
It did.
It's hard to say that.
It did. As devastating, really, it was like a biblical slap in the face. Devastating. But this was a wake-up call of God saying to the Jewish people, wake up before you are done.
Wow.
And this saved the state of Israel and the Jewish people, this moment. And we paid a terrible price, which we shouldn't have paid. I mean, we could have done things maybe differently. But because we didn't,
things would have been 1,000 times worse if they actually succeeded in what they really wanted to do.
If nothing would have happened, and Iran's quest towards nuclear weapons would have continued, and Hezbollah will have continued growing, and Hamas and so on, in 2-3 years, we would have been in a situation that is game over. Mm-hmm. We couldn't have shifted this back.
Yeah.
So we really...
How involved are you? Okay, so October 7th took place. Nobody listened to you before. But from October 7, 2023, do you feel like somebody in the government and in the military began to listen to you?
So at that moment, we became the one voice that they were listening to. And for two reasons. One, because they understood that we understand what we're talking about. But the other reason was that in order to push a policy of a decisive win, the government needed an umbrella of officers who know what they're talking about, who can mobilize the society and strengthen the army, and give the umbrella, diplomatic also umbrella, needed to push the policies. I can tell you that a few days after the 7th of October, as we were amassing our forces in the south, hundreds of thousands of soldiers training, and the big question is, are we going in or not? Are we going to go into Gaza now?
Because as far as the Americans were concerned, we shouldn't.
Exactly. They sent experts who said to the government and to the army, if you go in Gaza, thousands of Israeli soldiers are going to get killed. You should not go in. Cut your losses. Take your hostages. Negotiate. Don't fight. And at this defining moment, the Prime Minister calls us for a meeting. And we arrived to the Kiryat, to Tel Aviv, to a meeting with the Prime Minister in a moment of decision-making. Are we going in or not? And we're sitting outside the room. Very strong atmosphere of war, And I'm thinking to myself, as we are sitting outside, this feels to me like a Churchillian moment. It feels to me like the moment when Churchill was elected, when the Nazis conquered all of Europe, the British army surrounded in Dunkirk, on the verge of extinction. And Churchill, he stands in the British Parliament, and this gives inspiring speech talking about victory.
Exactly.
They're about to be destroyed, and he mobilizes the whole British society to fight, And I said to myself, when we go into the meeting with the Prime Minister, this is not just about, giving him the right advice, what to do with Division 99 or 162. It's about spirit. So we go in, and I sit in front of him. I look at him, and it's a very tough moment for him, devastating. And I said
you
to
saw
him,
on his face.
Wow, you couldn't miss it, It was really hard moment. And I look at him and I say, Mr. Prime Minister, I cannot even imagine what you're going through. It must be devastating how you feel, the sights of the 7th of October, the atrocities. And you're asking yourself, how did it happen to me, probably? I want to tell you something. You should not feel like that. You are privileged. You were chosen to lead Israel in its most defining war in its history. You were chosen.
You said that
all your life prepared you for this moment. It's not by chance that you are sitting on this chair. I wish I was on this chair. You are privileged.
Wow.
You were chosen to lead us to the biggest victory in our history. It's up to you. And the generals told him, listen, we know you are disappointed. The army failed miserably on the 7th of October.
Yeah, well.
But we know the commanders, we know the brigade commanders, the soldiers, the company commanders.
In other words, the top generals failed you, but we know...
we know that our warriors, give them the command. When they go into Gaza, nothing will stop them. Nothing.
In a way, did you insinuate that stop listening to the generals and count on your military?
I think he understood
because
that.
This is the moment Netanyahu, I believe, changed and did not take everything they say as, okay, that's it. He started questioning things.
Definitely. And I think that this was the moment he understood that this is an historical moment. He has a mission from God.
Wow.
From God.
So you said that to him and you felt like he understood it?
He did. And I can tell you 2 days later, he gave the command.
Amazing.
And from that moment, we're moving steadily towards a decisive win, just as we talked about, on all fronts, changing completely
the entire Middle East.
Reality and for generations to come. The changes that we are making are going to impact many, many generations ahead. And I can tell you this, and I've said that in the last 2 years, every day, before the attack against Hezbollah, and before Iran, and before Syria, and before the big wins in Gaza, I said, the bigger the win will be, the more decisive this win is going to be, the greater the golden age of Israel and the Jewish people will be the day after.
Amazing.
And I believe that. I believe that we are on the verge of a golden age. And President Trump, when he spoke in the last week in the Knesset, he said that you are on the way to your golden age.
So golden age, when we spoke earlier, in your mind, golden age is not just financial prosperity, but what you really think should and may happen is that the Jewish people around the world will finally understand that they need to move back here.
Yeah, I think our golden age is really realizing everything that our redemption is all about. It's about the Jews.
The return. I always tell people in Ezekiel 36, God says to the prophet, wherever you went, you profane my name. And how did you profane my name? Because you were away from your land. And people ask, aren't you God's people? Why are you not in the land? And God said, you need to come back.
Right. And I think this is the moment. And I think that what we'll see is that Israel will emerge very strong and prosperous and stable from this war. And unfortunately, as optimistic as I am about what will happen in Israel, I think that anti-Semitism, unfortunately, is going to grow more and more. And we need to prepare Israel to absorb, millions of Jews that will come.
So in a way,
Israel.
It's a blessing in disguise, basically.
Yeah, in a way. Zionism is relevant today just as it was 70, 80, 100 years ago.
You're right.
We need to go back. God sent us a miraculous cure called Zionism. And we stopped taking the medicine and became ill again. And we cannot, Zionism not only didn't end, it didn't even start yet. We're just at the beginning. And we need to embrace again our values, our Jewish Zionist values, and build, this amazing country. And there is no retreat.
Yeah, no retreat.
We're not retreating again.
Yeah,
this time, the third house of God, it's forever. We're not going to retreat. And we have a responsibility to be proactive and shape reality. We cannot just sit and say, we'll wait for the Messiah and see what happens. No, we have to be proactive.
Yeah.
And we have to safeguard Israel. We have to revive our Jewish Zionist values. We have to bring all the Jews to the land of Israel. And while they're outside, we have to defend them. We have to really be proactive.
If we can defend the Druze in Syria, we should defend the Jews all around the world.
Definitely.
As well.
And it should be a priority.
Yeah. Look, I wanted to touch more about October 7th, but I think that maybe we can do it in another time. I think that we ended up in the probably best note we can on the future of Israel. Although I really wanted to ask you, do you think it's the end of the wars? The Bible says that there will be more wars, such as the one that is called Gog from the land of Magog, but Israel will be safe, secure, and prosperous when that happens. So it's not like you're saying, now we're going to win and that's it.
When I was Deputy Division Commander of the Gaza Strip, I had many delegations coming, and because of my English, they used to send me to brief them. And we used to stand in a site called Black Arrow, overlooking the northern part of Gaza. And each time it was the same. I was a colonel at the time. They would ask me, Colonel, what's going on in Gaza? And no matter what really went on in Gaza, I always answered the same. I said, since the day of the judges, same thing. Gazans attack us. We bring the people, we fight them back again and again and again. You read the book of Judges, you look at today and you ask yourself, what changed? The same dynamics all over again. But at the end of the book of Judges, after the stories of Samson and, many wars in Gaza, it says, and the land was quiet for 40 years.
Yes.
And our rabbis asked, why state that? Every letter, every word in the Bible has a meaning. And the answer was that 40 years of quiet in the land of Israel is an event of biblical dimension. Never happened in 4,000 years.
So you're saying if it's a long period of peace, it's okay, we'll take it.
Yeah. So saying that it will be forever, maybe in the days of the Messiah, but until then, we can, through strength, just as David, he really won big wars and enlarged Israel, and then Solomon enjoyed that years of prosperity and peace. The same was at the day of the Judges, and the same was in the days of the Maccabees. They had big winnings against the Greeks, and then they enjoyed a long time of quiet and prosperity. But because Israel is situated in the most geostrategic place in the world, and it's because it's the most important religious place in the world, there will always be forces that will want to challenge and control it. And the only way to ensure long term of peace and prosperity is peace through strength. It's really, really being strong.
You sound like in the Trump's team right now.
Yeah, no, because this is it. In the Middle East, you want to be strong, you want to be, stable and in a peace situation, you need to really be strong. And we have to invest, and we need all the people of Israel to serve.
Yeah.
We need a nation that serves the country. We need a very, very strong military. But what will make the military strong, before we talk about tanks and airplanes and cyber, is values. It's really, really the connection.
Do you
to
think
our values.
people in Israel are now more into believing in God and the existence of God than they did before October 7th?
Definitely.
Do you see a shift?
Huge shift.
Even among the leadership and the military, and I mean, you see that.
When you see the whole Air Force of the State of Israel flying to Iran, facing 120 air defense systems, and they're able in minutes to kill all the leadership almost of the military of Iran and the scientists, and destroy 80 of these systems, and not one airplane falls. And we fight for 12 days, and everybody is safe back. If this is not a miracle, I don't know what a miracle is.
Yeah,
I mean,
we are the land of
people
miracles.
don't understand the level of danger we were in. And by the way, I can tell you that when we decided we were going to attack in Iran, which was like 7 months before it happened, we shifted the center of gravity from the north, from Lebanon, Syria to Iran. And in 7 months of really focusing on preparations, Israel developed capabilities that are beyond imagination, that bend the laws of physics and chemistry. It's capabilities that are going to impact 50 years ahead. It didn't just impact the 12 days of war. And this burst of creativity in a very, very short time, and not only being able to be creative, but also to weaponize this, make it, capabilities that actually work on the battlefield. I don't think there is any nation in the world.
Do you think there's a need for round 2 in Iran? Or in Hezbollah? Or
I think that we'll have to build a national security concept that says that we need to be all the time proactive in preventing any future buildup of forces that might endanger us, which means you have to be constantly, proactive. Striking, yeah, if needed.
So, and you don't call it another war. It has to be a routine.
It's exactly. It's a kind of
like what we're doing in Lebanon right now.
Yeah. Now, part of the way to deal with this is also building this alliance, this Western Israeli moderate Sunni alliance that will extend all the way to Indonesia. I saw this morning pictures of President Trump visiting Malaysia. It's not by chance. It's another country that we want to normalize relations with. So building this alliance under the umbrella of the U.S. is part of the way you have to deal with the future
you're approving the 20 points program of Trump.
Yeah, as long as they're all implemented. We dismantle Hamas, they get out of Gaza, we completely demilitarize the Gaza Strip, we sign these peace agreements, but we all the time have to be alert and proactive. And also remember that even when we win all this multi-front war, we have a big challenge inside the land of Israel. We have to deal with our sovereignty and governance in Judea and Samaria, in the Negev, in the Galil, and we have to focus on the rising anti-Semitism and delegitimation, and also deal with the most important thing, us.
So the 4 things that you described in your book, these are active battles.
So the book gives a real formula. We talk about how to secure Israel for generations to come. It's amazing, that for a nation that has been expelled from its land 4 times, Assyrians, Babylonians, Romans, Muslims, 2,000 years in the diaspora, and even when miraculously we managed to come back, endless amount of wars and operations, and one question, that is important in this life, how to secure Israel for generations to come. No think tank has ever answered this question. No government has ever given a serious answer. And we in IDSF, we said, we'll answer this question. We put an answer to what is needed to secure Israel for generations to come. And this answer will have to be reviewed every 10, 20, 25 years because things change. But we gave an answer. Let's talk about that. We need to really discuss that. And the answer doesn't talk just about the army, Shin Bet or Mossad. It gives an understanding of what kind of existence we have in the land of Israel, what kind of peace agreements could we have and what not, what would strengthen us, what would endanger us. It looks really at the big picture of Israel's national security.
Amazing. Wow. What a amazing and so inspiring conversation we had. What is your future? I mean, do you look for a political position or are you thinking about that?
So I can tell you that when I founded IDSF, the last thing on my mind was politics. I really was against even thinking about that for many years. But on the 7th of October, when I saw this massacre, I felt two things. I felt really angry on all the politicians that didn't listen to us and, brought us to this terrible situation. And I felt also a sense of guilt. I said to myself, we knew what was coming. Maybe we could have done more. Maybe I should have shouted more. Maybe I should have rioted. I don't know. I felt like,
survivor's guilt.
And then I said to myself, okay, a movement is great and we're going to continue that, and the think tank is great and we're going to do that and so on. But decision making is done in the government.
In the cabinet.
And I cannot have a reality that we don't impact this decision making. So now I look at it differently and I really think seriously about, the need of new leadership in Israel. And I think we need a new leadership. It's not going to change in a day. It's not that in the coming elections, all the politicians will go home. No. But I think that in 6 years, there will be probably a complete shift in
I think the existing
politics.
parties might even evaporate. And
some of them will already in the coming elections, others in the elections afterwards. But it's time to build the next leadership of Israel for the next 20, 25 years. And this leadership will emerge from organizations like IDSF, will emerge from the many warriors that fought.
Which position would you like to have the most, if you could?
It's a good question. People would say, obviously, Minister of Defense. But
because
I don't know in a year if this will be the most important job, or maybe foreign affairs, because of all this, building of relationship around the world. And unfortunately, there are not many politicians who can speak fluently and communicate. And
to be honest with you, this is where the Palestinians are really leaving us behind,
right,
with their English. And
and another way of looking at it is saying, okay, we're moving from the war on our borders to the battle inside the land of Israel. So also internal security is very, very important.
National security.
Internal national security is crucial. So there are many important issues, and we'll have to see,
Well, so we want to wish you a lot of success in your endeavors. Thank you for a breathtaking interview. And I want again to tell people that this is an amazing book that they should put their hands on. No Retreat. General Amir Avivi. You can find it online. We have a QR code in the lower third, so you can scan and get that book. General Avivi, thank you very much. And come back again if you have a chance. Thank you very much.